Hello, everybody. This is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today, we're going to respond to the accusation by homosexuals that Jesus never denounces homosexual or homosexual addicts. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper et seculae seculorum. Amen. Another episode where we talk about this are 3 Catholic teachings that a lot of Catholics don't agree with, and one of them is homosexual marriage. So you might hear some Catholics who are either in a same-sex attraction or actually in a same-sex relationship this saying, because I think they know that homosexuality is denounced in other parts of the Bible, but they'll say, well, Jesus never said that. Okay, well, I mean, this is a pretty easy retort. Jesus didn't denounce a lot of bad things in the Gospels. Remember, the Gospels, as it talks about in John and in Matthew, is just a little piece of Jesus's ministry. But either way, I mean, Jesus doesn't talk about the insidious nature of being under the influence while riding a chariot, where you could run over people. He didn't talk about that. Doesn't mean it's not inherently bad. So the idea that just because Jesus doesn't say something is bad is specious logic, because there's a lot of things that Jesus doesn't talk about that are bad that we know are inherently bad per natural law. Okay, so why doesn't Jesus specifically talk about homosexuality in the Gospels? Or let's just say, why did the Gospel writers not quote Jesus on these things? Well, look, understand a couple of things. So in that, what we would call turn of the millennium, 1 AD, time 30 AD, whenever Christ was around, during that time and in that culture, homosexual acts was not common. It was not common at all in Palestine among the Jews. So there was no need for him to call it out at the time. What was more common? Just regular all-out heterosexual fornication, and you see him talk about that quite a bit. But he doesn't talk about homosexuality because it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, let's look at the places where homosexuality is prohibited in the Bible. You look at Leviticus, for example. So God's giving the Mosaic law, all the do nots and so forth. And look, of course, he's going to throw this out because we know homosexuality, again, pray for those who are having the attraction. But it is a grave act against natural order. One of the reasons we have the procreative act is to procreate. And so homosexual acts don't lead to life. And so it's not shocking that God would say that lying with another man is prohibited, because it is a grave offense against God. And so were there a lot of Israelites doing that act? Well, I mean, you look before that, in Genesis, you see Sodom. We know the term of Sodom and Gomorrah comes from that. And you'll see a lot of revisionist, progressive, liberal Catholics and Protestants try to kind of spin why was Sodom really destroyed. But you look historically, look at the church fathers, we know why it was destroyed, right? Even Lot offers his virgin daughters instead of the guests who are the angels. So we mean to the men, but it was obvious that it had to do with sodomy. And then you look at the other place where it's mentioned, and this is going to be like in 1 Corinthians 6, certainly in Romans 1, where it's enumerated, and I can't remember off the top of my head. It's either Peter 1 or John 1. There's another place where it's enumerated out that homosexual acts, sodomous acts are immoral. Why is it mentioned there? Okay, so now the apostles and disciples are out of Palestine, and now they're evangelizing to cultures where homosexual acts were much more common. I mean, we know, for example, Corinth isn't that far from Sparta, and we know that Sparta was very kind of well renowned for sodomous acts. Now, even in Sparta, though, you never see the Spartans in peak Golden Age Sparta ever elevating their sodomous acts to that of marriage. The Spartans didn't have gay marriage, homosexual marriage. They never elevated that act to marriage because they understood what was the point of marriage. The point of marriage is children and giving them a milieu where they have a man and a father and a mother, which is every child's right to know their mother and their father. That's why they never elevated it. But certainly among the Romans, among just the Hellenistic culture, it was much more common. Therefore, Paul is going to write about the evils of this act there. So these are just some arguments as to how to retort it. And the other retort is just not even scriptural, because we're not Bible alone. It's because the church founded by Jesus Christ says so. We have that episode because the church says it. The church says it. And that's why we believe it. But if you want scriptural reasons for it, and there are scriptural reasons for it, and pretty much every culture throughout human history has denounced and not looked favorably upon any type of sodomist acts as well. All of them. So this is what I would tell Catholics who say, well, Jesus never said. Well, Jesus didn't say a lot of bad things. Didn't mention a lot of bad things. You're just trying to look for reasons to condone a behavior. And I get it. Look, we have to remember that sex is only meant to be in marriage. That's what we call the marital act. So homosexuals are bound to the same thing that I am bound to. I am prohibited from having sex because I'm not married. And so are homosexuals, and so are all of us. It's a cross that we have to carry. And you look, like Paul talks about in Romans 7, the struggle that we have between sins of the flesh. We talked about Galatians 5, the works of the flesh versus the fruits of the Spirit. I mean, this is a constant struggle. But let's not deceive ourselves. Homosexual acts are wrong. They're naturally disordered. And I know in this zeitgeist, you can get canceled for saying these things, but we have to put God first. And it's true, these things are prohibited and they're naturally destructive and they're naturally disordered. They're not part of natural law and the natural acts. So this is what I would tell some people about that. All right, guys, post in the comments. Love to hear from you. Please hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Share with other people. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.